Hello everybody, just thought I'd give you a little bit of the inside story on the making of the digital busking album and the whole sort of, I suppose, the scenario that surrounded the decision to not just make the record but the whole backstory of how I got to that point. Well, obviously we've all been through this lockdown situation. We know what that's all about. It's obviously still going on in lots of ways, the aftermath of everything to do with the initial pandemic situation. But, from my own personal point of view, just like a lot of musicians, when the lockdown was announced, I found myself in a situation where every bit of work, which I'll be honest, just like most of my life and most musicians out there, most of that, what little work I had that was coming immediately disappeared. I had some acoustic shows and I was working on a film project with Dave Kemp, which immediately got pulled. That whole thing collapsed. So I was kind of left in this kind of tailspin, and as was the rest of my family. I mean, my wife works with old people as an independent therapist. And of course, because of that situation, all of her work dried up. So we were, just like I say, just like a lot of households, in a very, very bad situation in terms of how we're going to make ends meet and what we were going to do, and nobody knew what was going to happen with the lockdown, etc. So I kind of, I faced the situation like I've done in many times in my life before. I think one of the extraordinary things about being a musician is that you learn to roll with the punches. You learn to understand that it's going to be massive highs and huge lows a lot of the time. I think that's very true. I think every musician has felt this. There are times when you're very buoyant and you're working all the time and everything's fantastic and you're getting great results. But there are equally just as many times when you're very low because there isn't a lot of work around, or what you've done hasn't created enough of an impact to sort of, be able to maintain, a sort of full-time position as a musician in life, So I kind of took it with I think I sort of adopted this very familiar attitude that I'm going to carry on anyway. And I can remember I was in my little studio, where I do a lot of these broadcasts from. Obviously today I'm in Vale Studios at the moment, making the third Wayward Sons record. So hence me being in this environment. But I was in my little studio, and I remember just looking across the room at my guitar, and it was on its stand in the corner. And I just thought, out of everything in my life, every situation I've been in as a professional person and as a just as a human growing up through the things that I love to do and figuring out who I am, that instrument has been with me the whole way. Not that specific instrument, because obviously I've had different guitars, but the guitar itself, the actual thing, it just in very many ways embodied the very reason why I can even sit here today and talk about this situation. So I picked up my guitar and I started playing songs to myself, and I thought, I've got all these songs, I've got my voice, I've got the guitar. That is in essence what this whole thing is about. The whole reason I've been a musician is to use that instrument to create stories, to create songs, to talk, to communicate, to join together in a community of people, and to hopefully give an insight, or at least a viewpoint of life that others hopefully can benefit from, whether it's because you disagree with it or whether you disagree with my point of view. My point is I wanted to kind of always create a sense of belonging, and that we're all part of the same thing, So once I'd kind of made that decision and I'd got over the initial shock of, right, we're going to be at home, and what else can I do? It was a case of, right, well, I can now use the technology that is at our fingertips. This is where I think the lockdown situation and the whole pandemic, the COVID-19 situation, has given rise to a lot of inventive and fluid situations for people, specifically in the arts. I think it's been an extraordinary bonus to look at the technology that we have, Facebook, obviously, all the social media and the connection down a wire. Essentially, that's what it really is, isn't it? To all of us feeling the same things, all of us having this same sort of sense of especially at that particular point, sense of worry and concern about what the future was going to hold. And so my reaction to that was, well, look, I've got these stories, I've got these songs that mean a lot to a lot of people, and I'm going to use them. And so we started very gently and very tentatively just doing a couple of songs on Facebook, as you know. And eventually I spoke to my manager and also to Rob, who I work with, and we all sort of thought, well, actually there's some mileage in this. We can use this situation to help entertain people and bring some normality in what is a really completely unnormal situation. So that's how the whole idea was born. And, obviously I spent 13 weeks. I think it was my friend Craig in America said, I think I played 77 original songs and 127 performances of 127 songs, if you like. So when we kind of got to the end of the lockdown and when everything started to open up again, and we started to realize that things are changing, people getting back to work and all the rest of it. And because of the journey that I've been on with everyone, and there were some really unique moments in that whole situation. I mean, the very fact I had to go back and re-examine some Little Angel songs, for instance, from every album, because of course I did the Don't Pray For Me, Young Gods and Jam albums in sequence, to go back and re-examine those albums and to re-look at those songs and to have to relearn them again was, for me, a really amazing situation. And the first time for a long time I'd actually re-examine those records and realised that actually there were some really good songs on there, and some songs I'd forgotten about. I think Love Is a Gun, for instance, is one that comes to mind immediately, how I've rediscovered that song. I really fancy re-recording that tune. I think it was never really given perhaps the opportunity it deserved, So that was one example. And 90 in the Shade and, Do You Wanna Riot? I mean, some of these songs either hadn't been played for 30 years live, or they had never been played live. So it was remarkable. I used to spend all week relearning the tunes and trying to find a way of just playing them buskily, just on my own. And it was a kind of extraordinary journey of rediscovery and humbled me quite a lot, really. I felt how lucky I've been as an artist to have such support from you guys and from the fans. And so all of that kind of went into the performances. It meant so much to me to know that people were turning up. And, there were some of those performances that over 1,000 people were watching me live, and I was getting 20 and 30,000 reviews the day after. It's incredible. So, and then there was the kind of like, your voices were coming through to me. I was getting lots of great messages and of support and people's reminiscences of their period being into Little Angels and how that all affected your lives, and how, it always is incredible to me when I hear someone say, your music was the soundtrack of my life as a teenager, for instance. That's been quite a regular comment, So it felt really important, and it felt very substantial as a kind of thing to do. And even though I'm not, fantastic as a guitar player, as we know, what mattered was the songs, what mattered was the messages. And I think the very fact I had to do it on my own. I mean, I can't describe to you how weird it is to sort of stand in front of my phone and perform down the phone, and know that that's reaching thousands of people and people are enjoying that, but with no feedback from the audience. It took a little bit of getting used to, and you probably noticed I wasn't very confident to start with, but it grew into something, and now I kind of feel very confident about it. And I realise, how lucky we were to have that connection through the internet and all the rest of it. So we do need to celebrate that. It's, the internet and social media isn't the most fantastic of places, as we know. It's got its problems, but really the reality is that it's a staggering piece of technology. And I think if we hadn't had it, I think we would have all been, it would have been a far harder situation to deal with. And I think we should give thanks for that. So yes, and then so I finished the whole thing, and then there was a lot of shouting about, can you make a record and can you do this? And so I took the audio from the performances, because we were able to download the performances from Facebook, and I sort of didn't know whether it was going to sound any good at all, But I took the audio and extracted the songs, and I gave it to a very close friend of mine, Simon Francis, who's a mastering engineer, which is the final stage that records go through before they become records. It's the final EQ stages and compression and where various sort of technical situations are applied to the audio to make it as good as it can be. And I sort of, with my heart in my mouth, gave this stuff to Simon and said, well, do you think I could make a record out of this? And he came back and said, actually, surprisingly, it's good quality. It's, it's not going to be hi-fi quality, but it was loud and it was, it didn't sound too bad from a kind of EQ point of view. So we've done the absolute best we can with it. I mean, it does sound like it's me. It is what it is. I sang down a phone. I don't think I've heard of anyone releasing an album where they've used the audio from phone recordings as such in this particular way. So it's a little bit of a first, maybe not the first one in the world. I'm sure there are other people who've done it, but it's certainly a first for me. And I'm very proud of it. I think we've managed to achieve something quite remarkable. I mean, I think there are 32 tracks plus 2 vocal introductions for both discs. And I think it's, it spans my entire career, right from the early days, right through my solo stuff, right into sort of, Wayward Sons and all the rest of it. So as a document, I think it's a really, I'm very excited about the way that it will, it'll preserve that time, because it is warts and all. I've left the out of tune singing, I've left the bits in where I forget the words and I missed the chords, and because I think that was the point. It wasn't about perfection. The perfection was in the fact that it was imperfect rather. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that it can stand as a reminder of that period and help you to, I guess, assimilate where you are now into where we all were, and remember the special things that happened in that period. I think one of the things that came out of it for me was a reevaluation of myself as a human being, and kindness aspects, and being more respectful of people, and realizing that life is very precious and we shouldn't take it for granted, and how the art is very precious, and how music is very precious, and how we all connect through those wonderful channels of creativity. And the last thing I want to say about this is how much you helped me. I've had so many fantastic messages about people saying how much I helped you, but in real truth, you helped me. If you hadn't have turned up and been part of those evenings on those Thursdays at 8:15 with a backwards clock and all the rest of it, if we hadn't all embraced that situation, then I don't know where I would have been, frankly. It gave me a boost. It gave my family a boost. It gave me an opportunity to carry on being a musician, and I cannot thank you enough. So if you bought this record, if you're getting involved in, maybe buying one of the commemorative discs, or you bought a t-shirt, or you just enjoyed it purely and simply as an observer when it actually happened, and you're not interested in the album, I still want to thank you for being there. I thank you for taking part, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the record. Thank you.